Lots to talk about here. The mother banned from daughter's primary school for complaining about trans identity lessons. Goodness me. Women's rights to be prioritised in equality law revamp. Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what we need to be talking about. Fiona McAnena is Director of Campaigns at Sex Matters. Good afternoon, Fiona.
Good afternoon.
I mean, you'd think by now we'd all learnt, you know, whatever you do not at any point raise your head above the parapet of the gender madness, because it's only going to end in tears. And here's another example of the insanity that we're dealing with. Karina Conway, a woman banned from her kids' school playground after criticising how gender issues were taught to pupils. Firstly, it throws up why are gender issues being taught to pupils? And secondly, what kind of system are we working in when a mum can't raise this without getting banned from picking her kid up?
Yeah, and I'm not sure there's any other subject where the reaction would be quite so ferocious against a parent who dares to question what's being taught. As you say, anyone who puts their head above the parapet gets their head chopped off. And, you know, we had hoped that we were getting near the end of no debate now. That was a tactic that worked for years to keep people in line so that children could be taught that they could change sex and that you had to play along if Mr. came back as Miss at school and all of that. I think this mother's been brave, but she's just saying what most people believe, which is that sex is real. When it matters, it really matters. And she should be able to say that. And, you know, it's good that she's getting some publicity for this. I hope that it will embolden other parents to challenge rather than cow them, which is what the school would have hoped.
Well, you'd think so. And again, on the back of a story a couple of weeks ago where a couple of parents were banned from their kids' school because they'd said some stuff on WhatsApp that the school didn't like very much, which ended up in a raid on their house by the police, etc. You might think schools now would be going, you know, look, the madness is over. Let's have some perspective on this. The school even admitted they acknowledged factual errors in the way it was teaching this area as well. I mean, Lord knows what poor old Karina Conway must have done to upset the head teacher or the governors.
Yeah, I don't think that teachers are demonstrating the kind of resilience that, you know, we would expect from them. You know, if someone criticizes your school, you engage with that. You don't ban the person who said it. And as you say, that's what happened to those parents recently. And apparently in this school, they said that Karina Conway basically made them feel nervous. That when she interacted with them, it made them nervous. Now, I don't know what her style was, but a parent has to be able to question what their children are being taught. And we know that there is real danger in children being taught that someone can be born in the wrong body or that someone can change sex. And in fact, it's completely counter to teaching guidelines to reinforce sex stereotypes. And yet that's what they're doing when they tell children that, you know, perhaps boy is really a girl. So we really need to get a handle on this, and we need the government to get a handle on it. You know, we're still waiting for guidance, clearer guidance to come out on this.
Well, indeed, and they were wrong. They taught kids, apparently, that transgender identity is a protected characteristic, which is not the case. It's gender reassignment that the Equality Act covers. And, of course, Conway had a protest outside the school. Kelly J. Keane, a name very familiar in this area, had been there, prompting teachers to call the police over the demonstration. I mean, really?
Well, it's completely inappropriate to be teaching that kind of stuff to primary school children. I mean, really, they haven't been taught the basics of sex yet. So why is anyone teaching them about gender reassignment or transgender identity or the Equality Act? You know, teaching children to be tolerant and children are naturally curious, teaching them to be open-minded and to learn. That's the job that should go on in primary schools, not these lectures that are really just indoctrinating them. So I think she's absolutely right to be challenging this. And if the school doesn't like the consequences, they need to deal with their own issues first rather than use the police to try and shut it all down.
100%. But is there some light at the end of this rather strange, questionable, dubious tunnel? The government considering changes to the equality laws to protect women-only spaces and clarify the distinction between biological sex and gender identity. Is that the sort of thing you've been waiting for, Fiona?
Well, there are two big things going on here. So, the Equality and Human Rights Commission has been working on a revised code of practice that is the interpretation of the Equality Act as it stands. That is expected to be put before Parliament in the coming months. We don't know what's in it. We saw a draft, we gave feedback, but that will help provide the clarity that, sex is real and sometimes it matters. At the same time, this week on Wednesday, the Supreme Court will give a ruling on a court case that has been going on for some years to clarify the question of whether sex in the Equality Act means whether you're born male or female, or whether people get a piece of paper from the government, a gender recognition certificate, can be counted as having changed sex. So that only affects a relatively small number of people, but it's an important case. And these two issues between them are going to sort this out once and for all. And hopefully we will have some clarity. We know for a fact that sex matters in a great deal of cases. Healthcare, for example, no piece of paper could change that.
And some of the cases we've had, I mean, there could be no sane person on the planet that would say anything other than the one opinion that the woman is correct to be, uncomfortable getting changed in front of a man, or, being in a situation where they are told that this changing room is for non-binary people, a completely invented phrase with no medical, biological, psychological backing to it whatsoever. And yet it's stuck up there on loo walls and stuff to, the idea that anybody would disagree with that. I mean, I don't know anybody that disagrees with, this common sense approach. So you do wonder who these corporations, arms of government and politicians, what's the gallery they're playing to here, Fiona? Who are they talking to?
I can only assume that it's years of indoctrination by the likes of Stonewall, that they somehow think this is the clever and progressive and modern way to look at the world. I mean, apparently the school, Miss Conway's school, said that they had a non-binary child, and all that means is a child who doesn't embrace sex stereotypes of either boy or girl. Well, yeah. That's a good thing. But you say that everyone recognizes that this is common sense, and yet people are not using the law as it stands to reinstate that kind of common sense. And I think the reason is that they expect, by and large, they expect women to just sublimate our feelings and ignore our discomfort because there are a few men who want access. And I really think if it was the other way around, if it was women who were making men feel uncomfortable, I don't think we'd be having this conversation.
And, it shouldn't need pointing out, but sometimes it does, that, sticking a wig on your head and wearing a pair of, knickers and a skirt doesn't make you a woman. In fact, it's a kind of slightly offensive stereotype of, if I do this, that makes me female. Well, that might be playing to a feminine, trait. I think Germaine Greer talks really well on this point, as you will be more than aware. Doesn't make you a woman. I mean, but who the hell thinks it does?
I think that the transgender phenomenon covers a whole range of different feelings and motivations. I mean, girls, for example, younger women, sometimes feel very uncomfortable as they progress into adulthood, and they can have reasons to want to hide their femininity. That's quite different from the type of person you've just described, which is perhaps another stereotype under this framework. But there's all kinds of reasons why people want to break sex stereotypes, and frankly, so do I. I don't particularly want to conform and be put in a box. So it would be progressive if we could move away from that idea that some things make you a boy and that girls must dress in a certain way. Yeah. But unfortunately, I don't think this school is doing much to advance that, because they seem to be determined to impose stereotypes and squash that kind of open-minded thinking.
Yeah, and this is an issue in an area that wasn't even around half an hour ago, and yet now people are sticking it right smack bang in the middle of a curriculum, which is mysterious in itself. Listen, Fiona, great to get your take as ever. Fiona McAnena, who is the Director of Campaigns at Sex Matters.